It's a week 2 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few wide receivers I would look to drop this week. The first guy's Michael Gallup of the Dallas Cowboys. So Michael Gallup, he got off to a pretty decent start in week 1 versus Tampa with 4 catches, 36 yards in that first half of that ball game before he went down with a calf strain. And now the Dallas Cowboys put him on injured reserve. And right now, 3 to 5 games is the diagnosis here for Michael Gallup. So Gallup right now, I know he's a pretty good receiver, but obviously he's the number 3 in the pecking order over there in Dallas is anyway with Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. So Cedric Wilson will probably fill the role here for Michael Gallup. So if you're in deeper leagues, I recommend Wilson as an ad. And Gallup is a drop because right now he's going to go on injured reserve once again. And he's been pretty injury prone the first few years out of his 4-year career. So right now, I know you got injury reserve spots in leagues, but if you don't got many, I don't think Michael Gallup's definitely worth the hold. It's not like he's a stud receiver or anything. So right now, I think he's an easy drop, and hopefully he's back sooner than later by week 5 versus the New York Giants. Next wide receiver I would look to drop is Russell Gage of the Atlanta Falcons. So the Falcons, they got off to a good start that first drive of the ball game, Philadelphia Eagles. But then after that, the Eagles clamped down and they shut down this Atlanta Falcon offense. So on the game, only 2 targets for Gage, and he had the old goose egg. Kyle Pitts, he was lined up more as a wide receiver on the outside. But this whole Atlanta team got shut down in general here. The Eagles had their way. They made good tackles. They made good stops. And Gage, yeah, he definitely could bounce back next week at Tampa Bay. But after putting up a goose egg and only 2 targets in this one, I'm not going to be confident in Gage. There's better wide receiver options on the waiver wire. So if you want to check that out, I have a video up about the receiver options on waivers. So right now, Russell Gage, he's an easy drop in my opinion. If he emerges over the next few weeks, then you go out there and pick him up. But the way that Atlanta Falcon offense looked versus the Philadelphia Eagles, it's going to look like a long season to me for this offense and some of these players on your fantasy roster. So I would go out there and drop Gage right now in the third and final wide receiver I would look to drop this week's Mccall Hardman of the Kansas City Chiefs. So we know Hardman's a speed demon. We know he's a quick wide receiver. But in my opinion, he's still a guy that don't run many routes, and he's just a deep threat. And in this ball game in week 1 for Hardman versus the Cleveland Browns, only 3 targets, caught all 3 of them, but only 19 yards in this one. So right now, a lot of people picked him as a sleeper later on in fantasy drafts coming into the year. But right here, there's not many people on that Chief team that's going to be fantasy relevant besides Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Mahomes, and Edwards-Helaire. But all the other receivers on that roster, they pretty much have one good week and then disappear for 2 or 3 weeks here with all the volume going to Kelce and Tyreek Hill. So right here, there's better options as well on the waiver wire than Hardman, in my opinion. And right now, he's just a player that's going to be inconsistent for most of the season, in my opinion, and an easy player to drop this week. So that's a few wide receivers I will look to drop here heading into week 2 of the fantasy football season.